2022, 2023, and my apology for 2024. We will look at each one of them separately. The year 2022. I have been accused of time setting ever since I published my 5-part YouTube series, 6,000 Years, ending the year 2022 in 2017. However, all I have ever said is that 2022 would be a very suspicious year because the 8 most important events in Scripture, all mentioned in the Great Controversy, took place at the end of a sabbatical year or in the midst of the week, Daniel 9:27, of a sabbatical cycle. Did I believe that we would be delivered by the voice of God on the Day of Atonement in 2022? Absolutely. When that event did not happen, I continued fasting, praying, and studying. In August 2022, I sent you an 18-page study entitled An Urgent Appeal. If you have not read it, you can find it in my website under Studies. I am assuming for this presentation that you have read it. A year later, on October 2023, after much study and prayer, I published on YouTube my 2-part series entitled Behold, the Bridegroom Cometh. Here are a few excerpts from Behold, the Bridegroom Cometh. Per Leviticus 16:15-17, Jesus went into the most holy place on the Day of Atonement in 1844. This is irrefutable. Per Leviticus 16:18, Jesus leaves the most holy place, never to return, also on a Day of Atonement, as the high priest did in the typical service. And where does he go? And he shall go out unto the altar that is before the Lord, and make an atonement for it. This is irrefutable. Again, go to Leviticus 16:18, you're going to see that the high priest goes out into the holy place, stands in front of the golden altar, per Revelation 8, verse 3, and begins a ministration there. He never goes back into the most holy place. Why is that important? Because as a church, we never think, we've never realized, we've never preached that Jesus ever goes out of the most holy place. In order to get out of the most holy place, you have to pass through the holy place. And in order for Jesus to take the sins from the most holy, transfer them to his body, go to the holy place, stand in front of the golden altar, put those sins back on the altar, atone and cleanse the altar, and then put the sins on the head of the scapegoat, he has to come out of the most holy place. It's just that we've been so focused on 1844 and trying to prove to the world that the judgment of the dead started in 1844 that we have never considered that when it says, then shall the sanctuary be cleansed, means cleansed finally, period. The 2300-day prophecy commences the cleansing 178 years ago. But the final cleansing, it's still in the future. All of those sins are transferred in the sanctuary right now, and until Jesus puts them on the head of Satan, those sins are not blotted out. So please, this is very important. You're going to see why it's so important. I beheld till the Ancient of Days did sit, the judgment was set, and the books were opened. I saw and behold one like the Son of Man come to the Ancient of Days, and there was given him dominion and glory and a kingdom. Daniel 7:9-14. This is also irrefutable. In 1844, Jesus and God the Father were in the holy place. We're going to read it now from early writings. This is all in conjunction with the spirit of prophecy. The problem is that God did not want this information out until now. Why? I don't know. We are understanding that God the Father and Jesus are in the holy place in 1844. God the Father goes into the most holy place. Jesus talks to his church, which are in the holy place by faith, and says, wait here, I am going to the most holy to receive my kingdom and to go to the wedding. I will be back from the wedding. Keep your garments spotless. Very clear. It's just that we've never seen it. Just follow me, be with me, stay with me for a few minutes. You're going to see that this is very important. Then I saw that Jesus would not leave the most holy place until every case was decided. Therefore, what is done to rescue souls from the coming storm of wrath must be done before Jesus leaves the most holy place of the heavenly sanctuary. Early writings 36 and 48. There's a number of pages there, so you see the ellipsis there. You're going to see that it's all one thought. This is also irrefutable. Every case is decided where? In the most holy place. At that time, Jesus receives his kingdom. The wedding takes place and Jesus receives his kingdom. We're going to see that. As Jesus entered the most holy place in 1844, he said to the wise virgins, "Wait here." Wait where? In the holy place where he had been since AD 31, until he returns from the most holy place where every case was decided. The wedding and the reception of his kingdom take place in the most holy place. Let your loins be girded about and your lights burning, and be yourselves like unto men that wait for their Lord when he will return from the wedding. Luke 12, 35 and 36, the Bible is clear on that. If the wedding takes place in the most holy place, then he's got to come back to where he was before he went into the most holy place, because there's no exit out of the most holy place to put the sins on the head of the scapegoat, which is Satan. I saw a throne, and on it sat the Father and the Son. I saw the Father rise from the throne, and in a flaming chariot go into the Holy of Holies within the veil and sit down. Then Jesus rose up from the throne. Then he raised his right arm, and we heard his lovely voice saying, "Wait here. I am going to my Father to receive the kingdom. Keep your garments spotless, and in a little while," 178 years, "in a little while I will return from the wedding and receive you to myself." Then a cloudy chariot with wheels like flaming fire, surrounded by angels, came to where Jesus was. He stepped into the chariot and was borne to the holiest where the Father sat. Early writings 54 and 55. Very clear, friends. Very, very clear. Share it with your pastor. Let him try to refute this. It's irrefutable. You're going to see very clearly. Leviticus 16, 18 to 21. And he shall go out unto the altar that is before the Lord. This is Leviticus 16, 18. He shall go out. From where? In Leviticus 16, 17, he's in the most holy place. And he shall go out unto the altar that is before the Lord, and make an atonement for it. And when he hath made an end of reconciling the holy place, that is actually the most holy place, we're going to see it. And when he has made an end of reconciling the holy place, and the tabernacle of the congregation, and the altar, that's the golden altar, he shall bring the live goat, and Aaron shall lay both his hands upon the head of the live goat, and confess over him all the iniquities of the children of Israel, and shall send him away by the hand of a fit man into the wilderness. This is the final cleansing of Daniel 8:14. The intercession of Christ in the most holy place ends when he exits the most holy place in Leviticus 16:18, never to return. It started in 1844 and has been going on for 179 years, but it is not cleansed until Leviticus 16:20 and Revelation 8:5, when Jesus takes the censer and casts it into the earth. There is no altar in the most holy place to be cleansed. The altar that is before the Lord in Leviticus 16:12 and 16:18 is also known as the altar of incense, Exodus 30:27. and the golden altar before the veil, Exodus 40:26. And it is found in the holy place. And what does he do in the holy place? He tarries and performs several activities. He cleanses the holy place, which is the most holy place. He cleanses the tabernacle, the holy place, and he cleanses the golden altar, and then confesses the sins upon Satan, at which time they are blotted out from the sanctuary. This event also must take place on a Day of Atonement. As Jesus moved out of the most holy place, it was impossible for the plagues to be poured out while Jesus officiated in the sanctuary. You see here, as Jesus moved out of the most holy place, he's going somewhere, it was in 3 dots. It was impossible for the plagues to be poured out while Jesus officiated in the sanctuary. Not in the most holy place, but in the sanctuary, which includes the most holy and the holy. Why? Because the plagues do not start until Jesus puts the sins on Satan. Then the plagues commence. Where does he put the sins on Satan? In the door of the outer apartment. The door going into the holy place. That's where he places his sins on Satan. Satan is not going to be allowed to come into the holy place or the most holy. It was impossible for the plagues to be poured out while Jesus officiated in the sanctuary. But as his work there is finished and his intercession closes, there is nothing to stay the wrath of God. Jesus tarried a moment in the outer apartment of the heavenly sanctuary, and the sins which had been confessed while he was in the most holy place were placed on Satan, the originator of sin, who must suffer their punishment. Early Writings 280. Friends, this is very clear. Very clear. It is from this golden altar, Revelation 8:3, in the holy place that the censer is cast into the earth in verses 3 to 5, and probation closes. Please read Early Writings 279 and 280, which we're going to cover, and the Great Controversy 613. There are 2 intercessions in heaven. First in the most holy place, and then in the holy place. And both start and end in secret. But both apartments must be cleansed. Why is that important? Because if you ask a pastor how many intercessions are in heaven, he may tell you 2. And how do they take place? Well, Jesus went in AD 31 until 1844. That was his first intercession. And then he went into the most holy place in 1844. And they have never seen that he comes out of the most holy place. Everything, probation and everything closes. The censer is cast from the most holy place. Ask the question. You're going to see. We're going to see very clearly that that's not the case. The real story is that he went into the holy place in AD 31. In 1844, he goes into the most holy. That's his first intercession, because the one in the holy place is before he went into the most holy place. There are 2 intercessions after he goes into the most holy place. In 1844, he goes into the most holy place. Then he comes out, and his final intercession, where the altar is cleansed, is in the holy place, not in the most holy place. Watch ye therefore, for ye know not when the master of the house cometh, lest coming suddenly he find you sleeping. What time is here referred to? Not to the revelation of Christ in the clouds of heaven to find a people asleep, no, but to his return from his ministration in the most holy place of the heavenly sanctuary, when he lays off his priestly attire and clotheth himself with garments of vengeance. And when the mandate goes forth, he that is unjust, let him be unjust still. That's the close of probation. When Jesus ceases to plead for man, probation closes. Christ's intercessions, plural, cease in heaven. This time finally comes suddenly upon all. Testimonies for the Church, Volume 2, pages 190 and 191. 2 intercessions, plural. The righteous and the wicked will still be living upon the earth. Men will be planting and building, eating and drinking, all unconscious that the final irrevocable decision has been pronounced in the sanctuary above, not in the most holy place, but in the sanctuary, which includes the most holy and the holy. Great Controversy 491. God commanded that an atonement be made for each of the sacred apartments. As for the altar, to cleanse it and hallow it from the uncleanness of the children of Israel. Leviticus 16:19. Patriarchs and Prophets 3:55. These things saith he that is holy, he that is true, he that hath the key of David, he that openeth and no man shutteth, and shutteth and no man openeth. Revelation 3:7. Ellen White applied that verse this way. I saw that Jesus had shut the door of the holy place, and no man can open it, in 1844. And that he had opened the door into the most holy place, and no man can shut it. Revelation 3:7 and 8, Early Writings 42. So by default, that has to have a dual application. Why? Because if Jesus goes into the most holy place, and she just said when he returns from the most holy place, he has to come out of the most holy place. But how come we haven't seen that? You're going to see why. Very simple. There is only one entry and one exit from the most holy place, and that is through the holy place. In 1844, Jesus went into the most holy place and opened a door that no man can shut. But Leviticus 16:21 requires, and early writing declares, that the high priest must exit the most holy place, and the sins which had been confessed while he was in the most holy place were placed upon Satan in the entry of the holy place, the originator of sin who must suffer their punishment. Early Writings 280. Now the event takes place foreshadowed in the last solemn service of the Day of Atonement, when the ministration in the Holy of Holies had been completed. That takes place in Leviticus 16:20. And the sins of Israel had been removed from the sanctuary. That takes place in Leviticus 16:20. By virtue of the blood of the sin offering, then the scapegoat was presented alive before the Lord, and in the presence of the congregation, the high priest confessed over him all the iniquities of the children of Israel and all their transgressions in all their sins, putting them upon the head of the goat. Leviticus 16:21. Great Controversy 658. Let's look at Revelation 3:7 again to realize that it must, to comply with Leviticus 16:18-21, have a dual application. These things saith he that is holy, he that is true, he that hath the key of David, he that openeth and no man shutteth, and shutteth and no man openeth. Revelation 3:7. In Revelation 3:7, he closed the door of the holy place and opened the door into the most holy place. But 15 verses later, in Revelation 4:1, another door opens in heaven as he leaves the most holy place per Leviticus 16:18 to commence his ministry in the holy place. After this, after what? This is Revelation 4:1. In Revelation 3:7, he had closed the door of the holy place and opened the door in the most holy place, and no man could shut it or open it. No man could open the door of the holy place, and no man could shut the door of the most holy place. But now he has to come out. So now he comes out, he shuts the door of the most holy place, and no man can open it. And he opens the door of the holy place, and no man can shut it. It's a dual application. It's that simple. We've never seen it. After this I looked, and behold, a door was opened in heaven. And the first voice which I heard was as it were of a trumpet, talking with me, which said, Come up hither, and I will show thee things which must be hereafter. After what? After Revelation 4:1, after he leaves the most holy place. Note that it is the voice of Jesus, not John, telling us to look now into the holy place for all the future activities in Revelation. In 1844, he has said to us, Wait here, I am going to my Father to receive the kingdom. Keep your garments spotless, and in a little while I will return from the wedding and receive you to myself. Early writings 54 and 55. Leviticus 16 has 34 verses. Every activity that Jesus performs from Leviticus 16:18, when he comes out of the most holy place, until the end of the chapter, and every activity from Revelation 4:1 until the end of the book takes place in the holy place, not in the most holy. Try to find after Revelation 4:1 somewhere that Jesus is mentioned being in the book of Revelation in the most holy place. You won't find it. This is a commentary by must have been a godly man. This is not Ellen White. When he was trying to decipher Leviticus 16, trying to figure out what was going on, he could not understand why what he was understanding, I think, is not what we were teaching. We were teaching only half of the story. Look what he says. Leviticus 16 is one of the great chapters of the Bible. In it, the plan of salvation is beautifully and impressively revealed. And some of the deep things of God are hidden within its 34 verses. The depth of meaning revealed in the ceremonies described proclaims a divine author. The mind is stretched to the utmost in the attempt to comprehend its teachings. Seventh-day Adventist Bible Commentary, Volume 1, page 778, a commentary on Leviticus 16. Friends, for 3 or more years now, I have spent hundreds and hundreds of hours going back, comparing early writings, comparing great controversy. Do they think? Why does it say most holy place and sanctuary in some places? This is all irrefutable after you see this study. So I just ask you, stay with me in this study. Please, this is very important. The Jewish economy revolves around the Jubilee year, which is the climax of 7 sabbatical cycles, each one ending on a sabbatical year. The sabbatical year is also known as the acceptable year of the Lord. Jesus said that when they gave him the book of Isaiah and he read in Luke 4:19, I have come to set the captive free, to proclaim the acceptable year of the Lord. That happened at the end of a sabbatical year. It is called the year of release, Deuteronomy 31:10. It is called the year of recompenses. Why? Because it is at that time that every decision is made for good or for bad. Where? In the most holy place. Isaiah 34:8. And it is called the year of my redeemed, Isaiah 63:4. Because it must be on a sabbatical year where the wedding takes place, where Jesus chooses the redeemed, where every decision is made and the kingdom is given to Jesus. As it were in paper, because it doesn't really take place until now at the end of time. But he knows, he's the only one that knows. Satan doesn't know whether Lumunilla made it or not. The angels do not know. We don't know. The only one that knows is God. And so, this is where we are. Why did Isaiah call it the year of my redeemed? Because it is a biblical principle that God's people will be delivered at the end of a sabbatical year. I always figured in 2022, oh, we're going to be delivered from persecution. No. We are delivered because we are either part of God's kingdom or not. The decision has to be made in the most holy place, and Jesus has to leave the most holy place on a day of atonement, because he waited 1813 years until 1844 to go into the most holy place on a day of atonement per Leviticus 16, 15 to 17. And if he waited 1813 years to go in, he's going to come out on a day of atonement. But he comes out only after he receives his kingdom from Daniel 7, from the Ancient of Days. That's why the Ancient of Days had to go first into the most holy place. Then Jesus said, wait here, and then he followed. At the end of every 7 years, thou shalt make a release. Deuteronomy 15:1. At the end of every 7 years, in the solemnity of the year of release. Deuteronomy 31:10. At the end of 7 years, let ye go every man his brother. Jeremiah 34:14. Friends, there's a quote that I've shared with you before. I think I have it in this study. God does not repeat things that are of no great consequence. 3 times we're told this. It was for failure to observe the sabbatical year that the Hebrews were exiled to Babylon for 70 years. Go and read it, 2 Chronicles 36, 20 and 21. Exiled for 70 years. Is this important? In AD 27, Jesus at his baptism received the anointing of the Holy Spirit, and soon afterward began his ministry. Then the message was proclaimed, the time is fulfilled. Then said the angel, he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week. Ellen White puts those brackets and puts 7 years. In the midst of the week, 3.5 years, he shall cause the sack. In those 3 dots, it says there was a 7-year period. The first 3.5 were given for the Jews. The last 3.5 were given for the Gentiles, and then probation closed in AD 34. That's what it says in those 3 little dots. In the midst of the week, he shall cause the sacrifice and the oblation to cease. Daniel 9:27. In the spring of AD 31, Christ, the true sacrifice, was offered on Calvary. The 1 week hyphen, 7 years hyphen, ended in AD 34. That's how Ellen White wrote it. Please punch in a calculator the number 27 for AD 27, when Jesus started his ministry at the end of a sabbatical year. Now add forwards or backwards by 7 for sabbatical years, or by 49 for Jubilee years, and remember that year 0 does not count. Here is what you will find. 457 BC, at the end of the sabbatical year, the 2300-day and 70-week prophecies of Daniel 8:14 and Daniel 9:24 to 27 commenced. In AD 27, at the end of a sabbatical year, Christ is baptized and proclaims the acceptable year of the Lord. Luke 4:19. AD 31, in the midst of the week of a sabbatical cycle, 7 years, Daniel 9:27, Christ is crucified. AD 34, at the end of a sabbatical year, probation closes for the Jewish nation. AD 538, at the end of a sabbatical year, the 1260-year papal supremacy starts. AD 1798, at the end of a sabbatical year, the 1260-year papal supremacy ends. AD 1840, at the end of a sabbatical year, Josiah Lish predicted the fall of the Ottoman Empire. AD 1844, In the midst of the week of a sabbatical cycle, the judgment of the dead starts. Friends, all 8 of these events are in the great controversy. They are the pillars in our church. Move anyone 1 year, just 1 year, and they all fall apart. This is not a coincidence. This is the hand of God. There are those saying that Jesus was coming back in AD 2027. They have now changed their position and postponed it until 2031. But they were saying it would happen in 2027. I have a study on that. I've shared it with you before. Friends, those that were saying that, the only sabbatical year involved in that was AD 27. Since they were counting the Jubilee the wrong way, every 50 years instead of every 49 years, none of the other events in the great controversy lined up. This is a mathematical impossibility for this to be wrong. It's amazing to me how we as Seventh-day Adventists don't see this and say, wow. But the story doesn't end there. Watch. On September 24th, 2015, Pope Francis spoke to the U.S. Congress for the first time in the history of the United States. His speech took place on Yom Kippur, or the Day of Atonement, Leviticus 23, 27 to 32, the most sacred of the Jewish festivals. That very same day, the sabbatical year, which takes place every 7 years, was ending, and the last sabbatical cycle of 7 years before the 6,000 years end on the Day of Atonement in 2023 was commencing. On that day, Pope Francis presented to Congress his encyclical letter Laudato Si, which he has pushed worldwide as his agenda for climate change. I assume you've seen paragraph 71 and 237, I think, in Laudato Si, that talk about the Jubilee and the sabbatical year and the Sabbath, first paragraph. And then in the second paragraph, 200 paragraphs later, he has, but we changed it to Sunday, and now we commemorate the resurrection of Jesus instead of what the Old Testament says. Had we been studying the Jewish economy, the delivery of Laudato Si to the U.S. Congress should have raised the eyebrows of every Seventh-day Adventist. Now, move forward 7 years, and we arrive at the end of the sabbatical year in 2022. Friends, something very important happened at the end of the sabbatical year in 2022. And I did not realize it until July of that year. I was thinking it was the end of the world, that Jesus was coming, just like the Adventists thought in 1844. I had the right event, but the right year, but the wrong event. On August 30, 2022, I emailed you my study, An Urgent Appeal, corrections to the year 2022, and my series, Leviticus 16, the sealing, the close of probation, and the trumpets. Why did Isaiah call it the year of my redeemed? Because the wedding and the reception of his kingdom took place in the most holy place at the end of the sabbatical year in 2022. Could the end of the 6,000 years be off and the wedding take place at the end of the next sabbatical year in 2029? Maybe, but here's the problem. According to my study, if you go to 2029, it's 6,006 years, not 6,000 years. My 6,000 year series has been seen by thousands upon thousands of people all over the world, and nobody has refuted the end of the 6,000 years. I think I have shared with you before, I corresponded with a Chinese brother who is a mathematician who gave this all he had. And he was convinced the 6,000 year study was correct. Based upon the current debt situation worldwide, the natural disasters taking place worldwide, the possibility of nuclear war on 3 fronts, but most important, the present condition of our church, that is not a likely scenario in my mind. So, 2022, no changes in 2022. We now recognize, because of what's happened this year, because a year ago, I could not have said that. We didn't have Israel in war. We didn't have all these things that are going on. We didn't have the craziness that's going on in the world. People have no morals. It's just, I don't have to tell you that. The year 2023